This is BBC One.
It is 9:25 on election day. The nation has voted. The count is on.
Hello and welcome. The 1964 election pitted Labour's Harold Wilson against the Conservative Party's Alec Douglas-Home, and the election would be a significant challenge for the Labour Party and Harold Wilson because at the previous election, Harold Macmillan had led the Conservative Party to a whopping landslide majority of 100 seats. And whilst that had been whittled down somewhat because Labour had won by-elections in the intervening period, so that the Conservatives going into the election only had a majority of 88 seats, it was still a huge mountain to climb and would require a swing of around about 3.5% to the Labour Party for them to win even a very modest majority from the Conservatives. Just to hear a little bit more about what would be required, let's hear a little bit from Robert Mackenzie speaking on election night.
Here's another way of looking at that all-important swing that David Butler's been talking about. At the last election, the Conservatives led Labour by 107 seats. Now, if 1 in every 100 of you has changed sides since the last election, the Conservatives are down 30 seats in their majority. It goes along like that. 2 in 100 brings them down to 57. 3 in 100 to 23. And the all-important break point is somewhere around 3.5. If Labour can achieve that, or go on to 4% swing, then Labour's in. And indeed, for the third time in this century, a party of the left will have a working majority if Labour gets a 4% or a 5% swing.
Harold Wilson became leader of the Labour Party in February 1963, following the unexpected death of then leader of the Labour Party Hugh Gaitskell. Wilson became leader at the relatively youthful age of 46, and this allowed him to project a sense of vigour and youthfulness. In keeping with this, at the Labour Party conference, Harold Wilson argued that he would forge Britain in the white heat of a technological revolution.
But it was at the Scarborough Conference in 1963 that Harold Wilson first and convincingly demonstrated his command of his own party. Would he make a speech that would dominate the Assembly, that would set the tone for the coming election year? It was one of those rare, dramatic, high moments in political life. Wilson sat late into the night writing his speech. It was a triumph.
Mr. Chairman, let me conclude with what I think the message of all this is for this conference. Because in this conference, in all our plans for the future, we are redefining and we are restating our socialism in terms of the scientific revolution. But that revolution cannot become a reality unless we are prepared to make far-reaching changes in economic and social attitudes which permeate our whole system of society. The Britain that is going to be forged in the white heat of this revolution will be no place for restrictive practices or for outdated methods on either side of industry.
Contrastingly, since the election in 1959, the government of Harold Macmillan had experienced a number of problems. Firstly, economically Britain was doing badly. Output had slowed, and a worsening of the balance of payments deficit was putting pressure on the pound, forcing the government to increase interest rates, to implement a pay freeze, and to implement spending cuts. A background that was to obviously lead to calls for change. Harold Macmillan's government also came under increasing pressure when French President General de Gaulle vetoed Britain's membership of the European Economic Community in 1963, and when the Profumo Affair was to kick off. This was a situation, and a scandal I suppose, where John Profumo was having an affair with Christine Keeler, who was at the same time having a relationship with a senior naval attaché at the Soviet embassy. This forced John Profumo to resign, and this led in short succession to Harold Macmillan's resignation to be replaced by Alec Douglas-Home. Now, Alec Douglas-Home was a hereditary peer who had to surrender his peerage and win a by-election to enable him to be Prime Minister. And this reinforced the idea that the Conservative Party were a party of old aristocratic privilege, whereas Labour was led by a more middle class, Harold Wilson, who represented the future.
During the last half century, the Conservative Party has been in office for 4/5 of the time. They now indeed go out of office, really the rare experience of having a chance to reconsider their position without the burdens of office. As many people will see it, they needed a rest. They've been in office for 13 years, and while new men have emerged during that time, it's been a very long spell indeed, the longest spell of unbroken office held by a single party in modern times. The Labour Party is in a curious position. In its 60-year life, the Labour Party has 5 times taken office. In 4 of the 5 times, including this time, they have lacked a clear working majority. Only in 1945 did they achieve a thunderous majority of the kind which enabled them to be sure of a clear 5-year run. I would think that it's unlikely that with their present majority that they would think of trying to run the whole 5 years, partly because of the enormous strain this will place on individual MPs. Granted, it's not a leadership that is tired, as the leadership of 1950 was after the better part of 10 years in office, including the war period. Younger men, energetic, eager to carry through their program, but they will face the difficulty that the strain on their whole backbenches will be simply enormous.
So why did the result go the way that it did? Well, there's lots to say here, isn't there? Not much of it is good for the Conservative Party. Harold Wilson could present himself as a young, dynamic leader. The economy was going through a difficult period, and the changes made by Alec Douglas-Home to kickstart the economy came too late. On top of that, Alec Douglas-Home is regarded by history as one of the poorest prime ministers the country's ever had, and reinforced the idea of the Conservative Party as an old, outdated, aristocratic party, in contrast to the modern image of the Labour Party that Wilson was presenting that seemed much more in keeping with the times. Well, that's all for me for this election. Hope to see you another time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course watch some of my other videos. I've covered quite a lot of elections by now, so give them a look. For now, goodbye and best wishes.
We hope we've been of some use to you, and may I just say now, goodbye.